Hey guys, and welcome to the tools and techniques section of how to select and change colors in Photoshop. Basically, this entire tutorial focuses on how to select colors, and there are really cool ways that we can do this automatically, or you can do this manually if you need to do that as well. And then we have really cool methods for changing the colors. We're going to be using adjustment layers, layer blend modes, all kinds of really cool tools. So this tools and techniques section, we're basically going to introduce you to everything we're going to use. And then in our next sections, we're going to start with our examples. Okay guys, let's go ahead and jump into Photoshop. Now, the first thing we need to do is open an image. So I'm going to go to File, down to Open. And here we're going to choose, make sure you download your sample images, by the way, and you can do that in the table of contents or right there in the tutorial overview section. Or if you download this whole tutorial, it's going to be included in your product download. So in our sample images folder, we've got a few folders: advanced, intermediate, and simple coloring. And then we've got our tools and techniques. So let's go ahead and open this guy. Okay, we're going to be using this to kind of demonstrate the different tools and techniques. So to start off with, obviously you can see we got a lot of colors, a lot of things going on in this image. And of course we want to learn how to select and change just certain individual colors. So we're going to start off with a hue saturation adjustment layer. Now this is probably the primary tool you're going to be using to select and change colors. So we're going to show you how it works. So we're going to go up here to our layer. We're going to go to new adjustment layer, and I'm going to go to hue/saturation. And let's hit OK. It creates a hue/saturation layer. So you can see it's its own layer. It comes with a layer mask, and you can turn it off or on by clicking on that little eyeball right there. Now, another way you can create these layers is, you can see I'm in my layer dialog. You can see there's a, right down here, a little icon. It looks like a circle with half light, half dark. Click there, and that's going to get you access to your list of adjustment layers as well. So whatever's easier for you. You can simply click there, go to your hue saturation, and see it. There actually is one more way. You can go to Window, you can go down to Adjustments, and you have all these little icons here. So if you'd like to use your little icons, you can go click on that one, and it'll make a hue saturation adjustment layer. So any way you want to do it. But let's go ahead and get into what a hue saturation adjustment layer actually does. So I'm going to start, just double click right here on this little icon. That's how you bring up the properties for the layer itself. Now you're going to see we have hue, saturation, and lightness. So we're going to start super basic with this. So your hue is basically, this is what changes your colors. So, you know, going from green to red to blue, this is hue. Okay, so as I change this, you're going to see all these hues in my image are changing. Now saturation is how much of that color is in your image. So more color, less color. And lightness is going to obviously make things lighter and darker. And for the most part, we really don't even need to use lightness that much. Most of what you need to do can be done with just hue and saturation. So let's go ahead and reset this. Just click on that reset dialog. Now you will notice here, check out this white umbrella. As I adjust my hue, not much is happening with that guy, right? Because all these other umbrellas have a lot of color to begin with, but this didn't have that much color to begin with, so it's not really changing that much. I mean, it's a little bit, but not that much. So if you want to just add color to something, there's a colorize button right down here. So I'm going to click on that colorize button. There we go. And let's see, I'm going to just increase my saturation and my hue. There we go. And I can even change my lightness, and that's going to see how light or dark that color gets. All right, so I can make that purple, green, whatever. So I'm literally adding color to my photo. Now you'll notice as I've been doing all of this stuff, it's affecting my entire image, right? That's why we have to select and change colors, because right now it's just like, hey, do this to the whole photo, which is most likely what we don't want to do. So we're going to show you guys how to select things. Don't worry. So there's a really good option, this colorize button, if there's not much color in an object to begin with. So let's go ahead and undo this, or just get it back to its default settings. So we're going to show you the next way, or we're going to show you the first way to select colors in Photoshop. And it's actually built in to the hue saturation adjustment layer. It's so cool. So right up here where you see master, you can click there and go down and select individual colors. So let's go to reds. I'm going to go to reds. And now you're going to see this slider becomes active. I'm going to stretch this slider way out here because I think it's nice and it helps show what we're doing. Okay, let's go ahead and just bring this up here too. There we go. So stretching that slider way out there. Now, we're still on our reds, okay? So this is basically saying, hey, we want to take our reds and we want to change those colors. So as I take my little slider right down here and I start moving my hue, okay, you're going to see, check out my image right there. You're going to see that those reds are, now they're kind of turning into green, which is cool. Now, here in this slider, this is why I stretched it out. Basically what's going on is the color on the top is changing to the color on the bottom. So you can see as I bring this to the left here, now you can see my reds are kind of going to like bluish purple, okay? And keep on going, now they're going to like a light blue. So that's how we know what's actually going on in our image. Now, you're gonna notice that it's not a perfect, like, these other umbrellas are kind of orangish, right? They're not actually like red, but as I move this, you're gonna see that those are getting selected a little bit as well because they've got some red in them. So we can use this slider down here on the bottom to pinpoint the area that we actually want to select. So the first tool you want to use is your little eyedropper. So click on your eyedropper and then click here right on your little red umbrella, okay? So then it knows like, okay, that's the red you want to change. Okay, now if you want to make sure it doesn't select out this orange umbrella, you can use this minus eyedropper and select, minus that out and say, hey, don't change that. No, I only want to change the other one. See, I'm minusing it out and you can see this little guy is shrinking a little bit. The area that it's actually affecting is shrinking down. Okay, so now that we selected this color and then we minused out this one, let's see how this works. Pretty good. It's definitely working pretty good, but I think we can do a little bit more. And this is where it comes in. You can do this totally manually as well. So this area here inside of this little selection, inside of these little two lines, this is where you're actually going to affect, and then it kind of feathers out to make it a little bit more like, so it's not such a hard line as to where you're actually coloring. So these feathering out areas, you can actually bring those in as well. So let's say we did want to just affect these reds. Well, I need to see what I'm doing first. So I'm just going to crank up my hue and I'm going to crank up my saturation to see where it gets affected. Okay, and you can see that it's affecting these areas too. Let's really bring up our hue and saturation so it really exaggerates, right? So now in this little area, I can start to kind of hone in. I can just literally pull these areas in from the sides and it's going to start to affect less and less of an area. Okay, so we can choose to affect more area here just by bringing that out and less area by bringing this in, which is very, very cool. Now, it may not be absolutely perfect, but oftentimes this can come in really handy when you need to select just an area. And notice we're not actually using traditional selections at all to do this. This is all within the hue saturation adjustment layer. So let's go ahead and bring these values back to 0. There we go. And now you can see as I bring my hue my hue slider, for the most part, it's just affecting those umbrellas, which is really cool because we said do the reds and then I use my eyedroppers to really hone that in, and then to get it even better, I changed these settings and now it's like really just targeting those reds. So a really cool way to target reds, or any color rather, target colors within the hue saturation adjustment layer. Now, again, these things aren't perfect. You'll notice a little bit of the umbrellas still get selected. They're still getting their color change. So that's why we have a layer mask associated with our adjustment layers. And a layer mask, all it does is it allows you to make one part of the layer visible and another part invisible. Okay, so in this case, I want to make part of it invisible so it's not changing the color of the umbrellas that I don't want to change the color of. So let's show you how to do that. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset this. So let's hit this reset dialog. And I'll make this normal size because you're probably going to look at it right there. So let's try it again. Okay, I'm going to go to reds. I'm going to say, yeah, change the reds. Cool. Okay, and we're changing that. And I'm going to expand our reds here just a little bit so it's making sure, because you can see here, I said change the reds, but it's still only getting like part of the reds, right? So I'm like clicking in here. I'm like, okay, let's really expand that out. Cool, now it's really getting those reds. All right, so we'll make that visible and invisible. And it's like, yep, it's changing those reds. But it's also changing these other colors. So again, this is where we use a layer mask. So with the layer mask, if it's white, it means that layer is totally visible. If it's black, it means it's not visible. So you can just paint black on this layer mask and it's gonna make it not visible in those areas. So let's go ahead and do it. Click on your layer mask here and hit B for your brush tool, okay? There we go. And I'm just gonna make sure my foreground color is black. So I'm gonna hit D for my default colors, and your default colors are always gonna be white and black. So D, default colors, and you can see white is my foreground and black is my background. So I gotta hit the X key and that just switches them, okay? So now I'm painting with black. So basically, I'm just gonna paint with black over the umbrellas that I do not want affected. There we go, we'll just paint with black right over there. I'm saying, hey, don't affect these umbrellas. So we used our hue saturation adjustment layer to target the reds, okay? And now I'm just saying, hey, make sure to not be visible over there. So if I turn this layer off and on, you're gonna see it's just getting those reds. We'll make that invisible right there too. There we go. So now that we've targeted those colors, so we targeted them once with our hue saturation adjustment layer, and then we used a layer mask to say, really just get those. So we can go back and change these values at any time. So let's say this property Windows was closed, no big deal. Just double click right here, okay? And you'll get back to it. Now, remember we already affected our reds. So you wanna go back to the reds and it's gonna save all that information in there. And here you can just go back and adjust your hue right here. So you can take your reds and adjust them to purple. And now they really are targeted. You can see what a nice job. That doesn't look Photoshoppy, it doesn't look weird. It's doing a great job. It's just getting those reds and it's making sure to not be visible on any of the other umbrellas in the photo. So really cool. And we did this with red, but you can do the same with any color in the color range. Just select the color that you want with your little eyedropper here, and you can add to it and minus from it. Okay guys, so the hue saturation adjustment layer allows us to target the exact colors that we want to change and then change them using hue and saturation. Don't forget about that little colorize button if you need it. And you can use the layer mask on any layer to make it visible or invisible in certain parts of your image. So that tool is super powerful. Now the next tool that we want to use is called selections. And basically how a selection works is you can make a selection of anywhere in your photo, and then it's only going to allow you to edit that area of the photo. So for instance, if you have an object, you could make a selection around the object and then change the color of just whatever's inside of that selection. So there are a bunch of really cool selection tools. Let's go ahead and show you guys how they work. So I'm going to make a new layer. There we go. And we're going to take a look at a few selection tools. So let's go ahead and start with our marquee tool. We have a rectangle and elliptical marquee. So let's say I'm just gonna make a rectangular marquee. Now you know you're making a selection if you see these little dotted lines here, okay? That's what tells you you've got a selection going on. Okay, so when we have this selection, let's go ahead and I'm gonna just use my brush tool because I feel like it, B for the brush tool, and I'm gonna paint some green in that area, okay? You can see it's only letting me paint inside of that selection. And then I'm gonna take this layer here that we're on, I'm gonna change the blend mode from normal down to color. Okay, and you're gonna see it's going to adjust, it's gonna change the color of everywhere that's inside this selection. Let me go ahead and just use a bigger brush and I'll just fill it in. So you can see that it's actually affecting the color of really just that area. You can also use other blending modes like hue, which won't affect your saturation, or you can affect saturation, which won't affect your hue. Okay, but if you wanna change something's color, then most of the time you're gonna use color. So basically by making a selection and then just putting whatever color you want, see I can just change the color here with my brush tool, paint with my new color in there, and it's gonna change it all to that color, which is pretty cool. So obviously that's a very simple selection. Let's go ahead and deselect, okay? Next we have our elliptical marquee. So if you have a round object, you can do the same thing with a round object. Just grab a, let's grab an orange, paint right in there, and this layer blend mode is already on color. Okay, so it's just gonna color that. If I set this back to normal, it literally looks like it just, have orangish yellow in a circle right there. But since it's on color, it's gonna change that color, which is super cool. So pretty simple selection tools. If you got a square or a circle, you're in luck. Now, obviously that's not always going to be the case, so they do get a little bit more advanced. Let's go ahead and just delete all that stuff on that layer real quick. All right, and make a new one. So a little bit more advanced here, we have our lasso tool, okay? And the lasso tool allows you to just draw freeform, okay? I can draw with my mouse, with a trackpad, with a pen tablet, whatever. You can freeform draw around the area that you'd like to change color. So I just drew around that area, and on my layer, I can just paint with this color again, change my layer from normal down to color. Pretty cool. Now, obviously, I didn't draw that very well. There are better tools for doing that. Just want to show you guys a quick way to select and change colors. Now, you also have your polygonal lasso tool, and this will allow you to just create straight lines. So if you have like a building or something like that that just has straight lines, there we go. You can kind of connect them with straight lines. All right, something like that. Now you get a selection there. Okay, next we have our magnetic lasso tool, which allows you to actually trace objects. So if I click here on the edge, it does a really nice job finding the edge of this umbrella. Boop, 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 boop. It sticks right there to the edge. Oh, sometimes it messes up. If it messes up, just hit the backspace key. Okay, I'm just hitting backspace here, or delete. There we go. And hit enter there. And then we could change the color of that umbrella because we made it into a selection. So a couple really cool selection tools. Next we have our magic wand tool, and this will actually select any area that's similar to wherever we click. So if I click here, it's going to select the blue that's similar to wherever I click. And if you need more selected, there we go, just increase your tolerance. So let's bring our tolerance back up, and you're going to see it's going to select even more now. There we go. And if I want to add to this selection, really easy. Just hold the shift key down and you can add. So shift and then click a few times, and look at this. Before long, I'm going to have this whole umbrella selected. Okay? So I don't got to go trace the thing. I can literally select it by the color that it's on there. Okay? Which is pretty cool. I've got that selection again on a new layer. I can just paint. There we go. Paint this yellow here. Change my layer blend mode from normal down to color, and we've colored that umbrella. Pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and undo that. So we've learned a few different selection tools. Now, the next selection tool we're going to take a look at is called the pen tool. And if you've never used the pen tool, I highly suggest checking out our Photoshop Basics tutorial on the pen tool. If you're a pro subscriber, it's included with your subscription. Basically, it just allows you to trace any shape in Photoshop super accurately. And then once you trace that object, you can turn that into a selection. And then once you have that as a selection, you can change the color of that object. So using the pen tool, let's just show you guys how it works real quick. And we'll use it later more in the tutorial. Let's just trace this part. I can click here and click and drag, and I can make these curves. There we go. I'm gonna hold Alt or Option to kind of change my direction here. Boop. And you can see we've got these curves. Now the real benefit of the pen tool is the fact that it really, there we go. It can be changed at any time. So let's say you mess the curve up, you know, you do something like that, you continue to move on, you're like, whoa, I messed this curve up. It's not a big deal. You can hold Control or Command, click on that curve, and then hold Alt or Option, and then boom, match it perfectly. Okay, so literally can be changed at any point in time. There we go. Alt or Option allows you to change direction, and Control or Command allows you to select those areas. So if you're using the pen tool, which I do suggest, it's a great tool. The only keyboard shortcuts you need to know are Alt or Option and Control or Command. There we go. And we'll show you how to use it more in detail. This is a quick overview, but you can see what a nice job I was able to do tracing that, way better than I would be able to do with like the lasso tool or something like that, right? Okay, so now that that area is, I've made a pen path around it, I'm gonna right click here, I'm gonna go to Make Selection, okay? Give it a little bit of feathering, which softens the edge up. And now let's go ahead and just paint with our brush tool right inside of there and change the layer blend mode to color. Pretty cool. So up until now, we've made these selections and then just used a regular layer and then just painted a color. But you can also use these selections with hue saturation adjustment layers. For instance, I've got my selection active. Let's go over here to my adjustment layers. I'm going to go to hue saturation. There we go. Click on that colorize button, and then boom. Change our lightness, bring that down. Okay, I'm able to colorize just that area because we made a selection first. That's pretty cool, huh? We made a selection first of that umbrella. So I traced it with the pen tool, pretty quick, but it looks really good. Pretty quick trace of that area. Then once we have that selection active, if you load an adjustment layer, it loads it as a layer mask. Okay, that's why it's only showing up right now. If I disable the layer mask by hitting Shift, you're gonna see this trying to color my entire image. The reason it's only visible here is because I had a selection. When you make an adjustment layer with an active selection, it automatically loads that selection into the layer mask. So it knows what you're trying to do. So if I hold Alt or Option and click here on my layer mask, you can see that's what my layer mask looks like. Remember, black on a layer mask makes an area invisible. White makes it visible. So all I did is I made that area with the pen tool, made it into a selection, and now that selection is loaded into my layer mask, which allows me to change the color of just that area. And probably the cool thing about paths that I think is just the coolest is if I go to Window and down to Paths, so I just use the pen tool and the pen tool makes paths. So I can now save this path. I can double click on here. I can call this umbrella. There we go. And at any time, I can just make this a selection again. Okay, and I've got my selection back. Pretty cool. So I can go back there and let's say, you know, and just another example, I'm gonna make that invisible, create a new layer, go to Edit, down to Fill. I wanna fill this with a color. That color looks good. And change my layer black from normal down to color. And that's another way to color that. Okay, so just showing you, there are a bunch of different ways, but making a selection first is a really great way to ensure that you're only gonna change the color of that specific area. So we can see selections are super powerful. They allow you to change just a specific part of your photo and leave the rest untouched. Now there's one more selection tool that I wanna show you. It's kind of hidden in the menus, but it's really nice and powerful. All right, so we're gonna go ahead, let's close this out. We're gonna make a new layer, and I'm gonna go up to Select, and we're gonna go down to Color Range. So select Color Range. So let's go ahead and click there, and we're gonna start to see something that's like, whoa, what is this? Well, let's go ahead and explain how this works. First of all, you got a few different views to look at. Your view might not be the same as mine, okay? You can have it choose to be black matte, white matte, a quick mask view, or grayscale, okay? I usually have this on grayscale, and basically what this is showing me is the areas that are light are gonna get selected. The areas that are dark are not gonna get selected. So I can use my little eyedropper here to just kind of select around my image. You can see, and as I select around my image, it's basically selecting everywhere in my image that has a similar color. Okay, so if I select the sky, well, the sky is gonna turn light and any similar color. So these colors must be pretty similar to the sky because they're getting selected too. Now I can choose this umbrella and it's like, okay, that looks pretty good, but it's not selecting the whole thing. So if you wanna select more of this umbrella, for instance, you can increase your fuzziness, which just basically selects more colors, okay? It's like in that hue saturation adjustment layer where we had those outer edges there, it's basically saying, okay, you want red, but also include a little bit of orange and also a little bit of yellow, okay? That's kind of what fuzziness is doing. So you can increase that, which increases the amount of color selected. You can also click this little plus eyedropper here and plus areas. So say plus, 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 hey, select all those areas. So check this out. Now we have a really light colored umbrella against a dark colored background. So of course, all the light areas will get selected, but really I'm just worrying about this one because we can use layer masks, remember? I can just say, hey, that selection's perfect. Let's layer mask the others away. So select color range is super powerful because it allows you to select those colors in your entire image and you can add to them. So select color range looks good. I'm gonna hit OK. Okay, so now that I have this select color range and I know this umbrella looks great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and load that as a layer mask of an adjustment layer. So let's go to our adjustment layers right over here. I'm gonna go to solid color. There we go, solid color, and then you can just choose your color right over here and hit OK. So now it's visible everywhere that's pretty similar to this umbrella, right? We knew that was gonna be the case because our layer mask was white in these areas as well. So now that it's set to solid color, I'm gonna go ahead and adjust my layer mask because I only want it to be visible on that umbrella. So let's hold Alt or Option and click on my layer mask to see it. Now, you don't have to do this to edit your layer mask. You can literally just click on your layer mask and paint white or black on it. Like if I paint white, it's gonna start to be visible over here, right? Because that's what it does. A layer mask makes layers visible and invisible. So if I paint white, it's visible over there. Let's undo that by hitting Control or Command Z. Now, if I paint black, okay, it's gonna take that area away. Pretty cool. So if you want to see what it looks like on your layer mask, you can hold Alt or Option and click there on your layer mask, and I can paint black in this mode too. So I can literally see very well where it's visible, and I'm just painting black all over here because I don't want it to be visible. No, 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 don't be visible anywhere over there. Bop, 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 bop. Now this area, we're getting pretty close to the other umbrella. So if I just do this, it might erase my other umbrella. So this would be a good time to use our selections. So let's go to our polygonal lasso tool. I'm just gonna click right there, bonk, just like right there, and hit enter. Keep in mind, if I got a selection active, I can only paint in that selection. So I'm gonna paint here. You can see I'm going over the other umbrella, but it's only doing it within that selection. Okay, so let's deselect by hitting Control or Command D, or you can go to select and then down to deselect. Okay, so if you see these little dots, that means you can only edit in that area. So I'm gonna go to select and deselect. Now we're back to normal again. Okay, and that looks great. That's a pretty nice layer mask, right? It's invisible everywhere, just visible over the umbrella. Now to get back to our regular view, hold Alt or Option and click back on your layer mask. There we go. So again, what I did is I used Select Color Range to select the color range of this umbrella. It selected similar ones, but I used my layer mask to say, hey, don't be visible there. And when I had my select color range, it made a selection, and I just made an adjustment layer, and it loaded that selection into the layer mask of the adjustment layer automatically. I know this is a lot. I'm explaining this right now, and I'm like, that is super confusing. But don't worry, because we've got a ton of examples, and you guys are totally gonna get this. Now, what we did just then is I've got this solid color adjustment layer, okay? And it's covering this umbrella. So right now it just looks like a solid color. So next I want to change my blend mode. From normal, we're going to go down to color, okay? And that's going to change that to this color, okay? And I can double click here, and now I can just change this to anything that I want. So I can go to blue, you know, we can just change our color here because I used a solid color adjustment or a solid color fill layer, which allows you to change the color of that at any time. So it's really cool. I just go over here and it's gonna change the color. Now, again, let's say we like green. You don't have to have this on color. You can have this on hue, which you want, which might get a little bit of a better, it might look a little bit better. You can go, well, saturation is not gonna change to green, but between hue, there we go, and color, you can see that color will also affect, it works just a little bit differently. So there we go. Hue, you can see we have a little bit more variation in the color, and color like literally is like, hey, just telling it to be that. Color also includes saturation, by the way. So that's why they're a little bit different. So I do recommend, if you're doing this technique, I recommend checking out, see what it looks like in hue. If that doesn't look right, then change it to color. Again, the whole idea is here, we've got a few different ways of making selections and a few different ways of creating layers that are all gonna change the colors in your photo. So I hope you enjoyed that little brief overview. We're gonna get to more like complex examples and things like that in our future chapters. It's gonna be a lot of fun. All right, guys, we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.